one of my very creative staff developed this really nice logo. And it was really interesting how much it just gave the whole thing an identity. And people started talking about, you know, the MLMC and when's the next MLMC. And it was different than just saying, did you go to that course last year at McGill, you know? And so I think if you are planning to do a lot of training and education, it's really great if you can take the time to, you know, come up with a good name and an acronym or an abbreviation and a logo. So next slide. So we're going to talk to you about 3 types of courses that we run. So we have a fundamentals course, which is really introductory, that we run every year. We have a frontiers course where we focus more on state-of-the-art or newer technologies that we run every 2 years. And then more recent development, which Anne-Marie will tell you a little bit about at the end, is this MLMC in focus, where we really focus in on one technology or technology area with the goal of forming a user group community out of that event. So Anne-Marie will tell you about that a bit at the end. And so between all of these, we kind of have a comprehensive offering of training. And we're now moving more into kind of a train the trainer mode where we want to train other people how to run these kind of events. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne-Marie to tell us a little bit about the fundamentals course.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about this MLMC fundamentals. So as the title says, this is really focused on light microscopy fundamentals, so the theory and the basis of light microscopy. This is usually a small format, so we have between 12 and 16 participants, and we actually run this course every year. It lasts 3.5 days, so it starts on the Tuesday afternoon and it goes on to the Friday afternoon. We do use an active learning environment, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about it in the next slide, but you just have a little picture here. So we have a teaching lab that we use to run this course. And usually the participants are microscopists that will have little experience in microscopy. So, you know, maybe they use microscopy on a daily basis in their lab, or they do you know, use a facility, but they really need to learn a little bit more about the fundamentals to maybe push their experiments a little bit more. So in the team for today, we usually have multiple corporate partners. They are usually the microscope companies, but they can also be accessories manufacturers and distributors. So for this MLMC fundamental course, the participants are mostly local, so they're mostly from Montreal. We have 4 big universities in Montreal, so we have people coming from all of those universities. It can also be companies sometimes. But they will come from diverse backgrounds, and this is always really interesting when we hold those events. So we are able to run that course yearly because there will always be a constant demand. So new labs will hire a new PhD student or new staff, and they'll need to get the fundamentals of light microscopy. So we have a high demand and we have no trouble filling up all of the spaces. And then, as I said, there can be a diverse user base. So they can be imaging scientists, they can be in physical science, life science, or health science. So this is our teaching lab here. It has 8 microscopes. All of the microscope station have an upright microscope you can see here. We'll give at the beginning of the course slides that they will use throughout the course. Each station has 2 screens, so usually we'll form pair of 2 people as a team, so they can both, you know, use the microscope. They have a lot of hands-on time, and they can each have a screen to look at what's going on on the microscope. We also have an instructor microscope at the very front, so the instructor can actually teach the class and show on a bigger display behind the microscope what's going on in the microscope. There are lots of interactive activities during our course, and they are spread out during the lecture. So we actually held the lectures in here, so it can be quite crowded when we do have the lectures here. And then it's really easy to go back and forth between the lecture and our hands-on activities. So I think Claire could probably give a course on how she developed this teaching lab, and I think it took many years for her to get that running, but this is really a great tool that we have and that we can really use yearly. Okay, so the concept, we do all the course with the staff from the facility, but also with corporate partners. And I think it's important for us to really think of the companies as partners, because we really want to have a benefit for the facility, for us, but also for the corporate partner. They need to see a benefit so they can be invested. Of course, for the facility, for us, the biggest advantage is at the ABIF, we make it a goal to really push on training and education of our user base. And having experimented staff help us run the course, this is great. And then for the benefits, I think Claire will mention all of those benefits for the corporate partner later on during the talk. So the staff will need to arrange travel to Montreal. So a lot of our staff is not necessarily from Montreal. We have some, but most of them, some of them are also from outside. And they will really participate in the training program. So during the course, they will give lecture, they will help during the hands-on session. And usually they do attend the whole event while they're on site. So the staff may not be on site for 3.5 days, maybe they're there a day or two, but they will be there during their coffee break, the lunch. They will attend the lecture, they will help during the hands-on activities. So there's a lot of exchange between the user, between us also, the staff from the facility, and from the corporate partners. And we also installed some different level of sponsorship depending on the contribution. So maybe they'll have different, also different teaching experience. Some of them sometimes will bring infrastructure on site that they can use as a feature of the technology, and maybe they'll share some reagents too, also during the course. So this is the last one we held, MLMC 2020. I think, what is it, a week before the shutdown, something like that. And it was really fun. So the demographic were people coming from neurology, materials engineering, and mining, biology, biochemistry, physiology. And then our corporate partners were Carl Zeiss, Leica, Chrome Technologies, and EVR Optics. And I have to say, Carl Zeiss, Leica, and Chrome are a big part of the facility. So we have instruments from those companies, and we already know all of those staff and are comfortable working with them. And we have a real trust between both parties. So this is a typical day. So that's the second day, the Wednesday. So usually the course starts on the Tuesday afternoon. And so what I want to show here is, first, we do allow a lot of time for coffee breaks, morning and afternoons, and a good lunch break. So I think this is really important for people to, to just freshen up and, enjoy a coffee. But also there's a lot of discussion and interaction that goes on during those coffee breaks. So it's really important to plan this during your event. And so Claire and I did a little bit of more tips if you want to read those later on. And so typically what we do have is, this hour-and-a-half on phase contrast imaging. So Chris from Zeiss will present phase contrast. So he will give a lecture, and then there's interspread during the lecture hands-on activities. And also, as you can see during the day, so Chris from Zeiss gives 2 talks during the morning, and then during the afternoon, we even break out the talks between us at the ABIF and some corporate staff. For example, here, Lane from AVR Optics. So, throughout one session, we have the lecture and then the theory about basis of light microscopy. And then over the years at the ABIF, it was developed a very detailed guide on hands-on activities. And this is really great because the participants also leave with that guide, and then they can use it because it goes through details like how to set up color elimination and such. And then this is an example. Maybe we go through the microscope light path to identify each component, and then maybe later on you have more question about the camera's properties more specifically. And then other times you can have questions about resolution and such. So it's really interactive. And I think it's great for the participants. And our last day is on more advanced technique on 3D imaging systems. So we have 12 or 16 students that we split up into different groups. and they will go on different systems that we have at the institution, or even sometimes one of the corporate partners can bring a system on site. And then, for example, here they'll go through wide field deconvolution, confocal laser scanning microscopy, or spinning disk confocal microscopy. During this fundamental course, we don't cover image processing or analysis. I think the course would need to be 2 or 3 days longer, and I don't think anybody will want to. It might be harder to have people, you know, commit to that time. But we at the ABIF we do run workshop yearly. You know, when opportunity comes on image processing, and they can be short, and then we can have multiple during the year. So I'll go through some of the challenges that maybe you need to think about before and during the course. So the first thing is we really want this to be a valuable experience for the, you know, the BIF staff, for the users that are the participants are going to be at the course, and also for the sponsor. So I think, as I said at the beginning, we need to think of those as a partnership strategy. And this one needs to be reaffirmed and reaffirmed during the course of the whole organization. If a staff from a corporation is doing a lecture, it shouldn't be marketing. It should be kept as an educational talk. And then it's hard to maintain, but you really need to affirm this multiple times. The lecture should and need to cover all important aspects of light microscopy. And so to cover this, and also to cover the previous point, you could ask for PowerPoint slides in advance, you know, before the course date, and you can go through them. And then if there's some adjustment, you can go back to the staff. So the hands-on session. So we do have companies that come with their own instruments. So they have an hands-on session on this instrument, and it really should be maintained as an educational hands-on and, you know, functionalities of the technology. And you don't want to have this be kind of a demo session from a company. So what we usually do is we either have a staff that will tour between each hands-on session, or we just assign a staff to each hands-on session, and the staff can make sure that if it's derailing a little bit, we can, you know, realign the conversation. And last, we need to ensure reasonable visibility for each partner. So they have to be clear sponsorship benefits that will depend on the contribution. And actually, Claire will cover this in a couple of slides. And last, it's because this course is really for the participants, and they need to be able to access a microscope and use a microscope. We need to make sure that each individual have time on the scope for, you know, manipulating the hardware or the software, and make sure that the talks are not just about a demo of the instrument and showcasing, you know, the latest feature. So now I'll pass that to Claire. So then just let me know when you want me to change the slide.
Anne-Marie. So the MLMC Frontiers is another option that we have. So if you want to go to the next slide. This one is geared more towards really showing the latest technologies. So it's a little bit bigger. We usually have 24 to 32 participants over 5 days. We do still try to have it as an active learning environment, and having the microscopists typically with intermediate experience or advanced. And we have had a few situations where people with little experience want to come, and typically we've found it's best not to do that, because they'll end up just completely lost if we jump right in at a fairly high level. The corporate partners are a big part of this one. We bring in the microscope manufacturers, also the accessories and distributors. We also often bring in the software companies, and we work with consumables, companies that sell consumables, and I'll say a little bit about that on the next slide. We have international participants, so we have Canada, the US, and many other countries. We also have people coming from all different levels, from graduate students and technicians. We've had several principal investigators come for the full week. I think because of our network and the people we know, we the last few years, it's been a lot more imaging scientists and also specialists from the microscope companies who want to learn more about the field in general. And as Anne-Marie said, for the introductory course, one of the things I love about it is people coming from all different backgrounds. So physical sciences, life sciences, we often have, engineering people trying to bring in biomaterials that are really tricky to image and so on. So it's really interesting to see the different backgrounds people come from. The next slide. Technical glitch here. So we spend a lot of time working with the companies for this course. So these are all of our sponsors from 2018 and very different levels. So you'll notice the size of the icons or the logos changing a little bit. So Zeiss and Leica, Nikon, Thor Labs, they'll tend to send equipment and really work with us to have the latest technologies available. And then if you look further down, Chroma always gives us free boxes of the fluorescent microscope slides for calibrations, and EBD will send us 35mm dishes. And I find there's a lot of legwork in sort of making the calls and talking to the different companies. But if you really tailor it to their needs as well, then you can really get a lot of them involved. And in my experience, having a dedicated conference planner is a really big part of this, because there's a lot of legwork, not in just making the contact and the agreement, but then in following up that they're coming and they're setting up a table for the coffee break on Tuesday, and they need to know where to go and when to be there, and so on. So that's something that I've always stuck with, is having some dedicated paid staff to help with the planning. So next slide. So we send the companies a little sponsorship package, and this is just the first page of it. I won't go through it in detail, but we're happy to share the slides. But we give a little bit of information about why they'd want to participate in the course, what type of institutions have participated. And we've been running both versions of the course since 2010. And so far, we still have 100% of participants who would recommend the course to another person. So we're on a good roll. Hopefully that will continue. And one other thing just to mention is we do give the companies a chance to show their microscopes to other people at the university. So if they're taking the time to ship the equipment in, bring their engineers in to do the installation and so on, then we want to give them a chance to, if there's somebody at University de Montréal, across town who wants to come and see it in the morning when we're in a lecture, then we give them that opportunity as well. Next slide. So I put in some of the numbers we have here, because I think when I first started doing this, I had no idea what I would ask. So I'm happy to share these documents as well. But we have two options. So there's the partnership opportunity, which is obviously more money, but we also give them a lot of benefits for that. So for instance, the platinum sponsorship, they can sponsor the opening reception and the keynote talk, and we have lots of signage around and have their logos up in the program. And then they can also send 5 company representatives to the course. So they're also, taking part in all the events and the food and the resources that we provide in the conference book and so on. So we found that this is a pretty good model, and it has a range of values to kind of meet the marketing budgets of different companies and different sizes, depending on where they're at. If you have a much smaller microscope company, they may not be able to do something like a platinum sponsorship. Next slide. And then I've always tried to be really inclusive. So we've come up with lots of other opportunities. If they just want to sponsor a coffee break and come for the day, like we've had EBD do that a lot. They'll come for the day, set up a table and show their latest consumables that people might be interested in, and just come for the one day. They can also provide lanyards and course bags and so on. And I think one of the biggest ones that we find works really well is this lunch and learn option, where they give a short presentation over the lunch break. And we've been doing this with our virtual events through what we call Techno Bites, where companies will give a 5-minute talk on Zoom. And it's really a lot easier for the companies to justify to their reporting structures that, I have an opportunity to talk about our products to a dedicated group of people who are interested in our products, you know. So that I found that that's a really big win-win one. We always sell those out pretty quickly when we do an event. Next slide. So Anne-Marie had already mentioned the importance of the hands-on activities. This is a huge part of the event, and the hardest part, as she mentioned, is letting the students on the scopes. And I know I suffer from this too. We often don't get to sit down and use them very often. So you start explaining things, and next thing you're sitting running the scope. So I always just make a joke of it and just tell the students, like, don't be afraid to tell the operator that you want to try it yourself, because I think most of the time it's that the people are passionate about the equipment and want to actually run it themselves. So that's a big part of it, making sure we have enough infrastructure for everybody to try. Next slide. So I think the biggest challenge with this course is the logistics. So we bring in a lot of equipment from outside, and I could probably spend several hours telling stories about deliveries and not deliveries and customs and import taxes. And I won't bore you with all of those details. And actually in 2018, we also had a fire the Friday afternoon, and the course was starting Monday morning. So that would be another half-an-hour presentation if anyone's interested. But I think the main points are there, and it is a big part of the coordination of, you know, getting the engineers to come in the week before and the space to set up the equipment and coordinating what equipment you have with the lectures and the content that you want to have for the course. And then sometimes, you know, when things go well and people get to know you, everybody wants to be part of it. And sometimes it's difficult to accommodate everybody. If, you know, just having enough space if 10 people want to bring a microscope in. And also sort of coordinating with the technical staff to make sure that they have enough knowledge in the area that you're trying to train in, like for, say, super resolution sample prep or something like that. And one of the things we've talked about a little bit is it also ties up our facility staff and sometimes our facility microscopes as well. And so that takes away a little bit from our, you know, day-to-day users. So one of the things we had thought about is it better to maybe showcase technologies that we already have in the facility? And Anne-Marie's going to say that talk a little bit more about that in our in focus option. Next slide. And so these are just some pictures from our past events. They're a lot of fun. They're a lot of hard work, but a lot of fun once everybody gets there. And one other, just a little tip, which doesn't really fit with the corporate side, but I always recommend hiring a professional photographer. You put so much time and energy into the event, and we usually just have them come for one day and take some pictures in the breakout sessions and in the microscope rooms and the group shot. And also to do post-event surveys to get feedback, including from the corporate partners and sponsors. So I think that we'll go back to you, Anne-Marie.
Yes, thank you, Claire. So I think we're going back here to, you know, is it better to showcase something that you already own in the facility? So this is where our next course, so the Montreal Light Microscopy course, but in focus. So as you can read from the name, this is really focused on one technology, on one infrastructure. And this, I guess this type of event could be tailored to your need, but it could be like a 2 or 3 days event. And then the plan is really to talk about the protocols you use for that specific infrastructure, maybe give some advice in between the users that are attending the event, and it's really discussion based. So the focus or the topics that are going to be covered during this event will be really focused on the interest of the active users that will attend this event. And then you can make it maybe smaller if you want to have hands-on activities, but you can go up to 50 people if you don't see a need for hands-on activities necessarily. Because we are focusing really on one infrastructure, you'll probably end up having only one major corporate partner. So it would be the manufacturer of the instrument, probably. And then during organizing this course, you really need to align the needs of the corporate and the facility. And one thing we found interesting is actually the corporate, they already have a user base that they know around the world or maybe in your local area. And they know customers that use the technology and really have developed tools over the years, so they can reach out to those customers and have them as the key speaker during your event. And last, the participants would naturally be advanced user because they already have access to the technology. Maybe they have it in their lab or they have access at their own facility back in their university. And the plan was really to build a network of users to support one another even after the course. And then during the event, you can discuss common challenges and come up with solutions. Maybe, many of the users have run into the same problems that you have. And then you can learn some new procedures, some new protocol. It could be simple prep or image analysis workflows. So you'll have to deal with the budget here, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the corporate, because they will be inviting that, their one customers that they know and they trust and they know they've been using the instrument, you can actually negotiate some traveling fund for those customers. And because they're going to be the major sponsor and the major partner of this event, it's not unreasonable to ask for a significant sponsorship. And one advantage is also for the facility is if you have this major corporate that's going to send a lot of staff on site to really run this course, you can ask for extra training and support for your facility staff because the corporate staff will already be attending the course. So this is an example of the flyer for the event we had prepared. So that was the first MLMC in Focus we were working on last year in 2019 and 2020. It was supposed to be held in May, but of course it got canceled due to COVID. And we didn't even go on to do the online version because I think everybody was swamped at that time. But I'm sure it's gonna happen at one point. So our event was partnered with Perkin-Elmer, and we were going to focus on their high content imaging system, the Oprah Phoenix. And this was going to be the first Canadian user group meeting. And they had suggested a keynote. So Dr. David Andrews from the Sunnybrook Research Institute, and this is a person they already know is working a lot with the Oprah Phoenix, and they're developing a lot of material and publishing, constantly using this instrument. So they were, of course, the sole partner of this event, but we did have a lot of discussion. There was a lot of back and forth between the company, and we wanted to have a little bit more sponsorship from consumable suppliers, for example. But they were not really up for it because this is not the type of event they were holding before. So, we could have asked, for example, this is just an example, Perkin-Elmer produces the Oprah Phoenix, but also the 96-well plate that will fit in the machine. So they highly recommend to use those plates. So you could ask for some of those free plates. And also another good advantage is they want to make sure that if they demo this system during this course, it has to be in perfect condition. So they'll probably come before and make sure that they will test the infrastructure and make sure it's in good use. So we spent a lot of time back and forth with emails and meetings with the Perkin-Elmer, and we had to coordinate a lot of expectation. So I'm going to go through some of those. So first is the format or the length of the course. So there can be two different kind of format, I guess. It could be held as a scientific seminar where scientists that uses the instrument come and give a talk on their science and how they address the questions with their infrastructure. So this can reach out to a large audience, whether you're a user or not, and it's kind of mostly educational. Or we could run it as an advanced workshop, and then really the users are users of the instrument, and they can connect and have in-depth discussion. You can include hands-on activities, and then you can really construct a network like that. And then you can also tailor it like as you need. We had included a poster session just before the seminar, and we also you could make it a one-day meeting or a 2 to 3 days event, and then you can mix and match the content as you like. And then the other thing we had to manage is the fees, the sponsorship, and the branding of the event. So the corporate partners, most likely they'll want this event to be free, because for them, this is their marketing event. It should be open to anyone that is interested in the technology. They will prefer to be the sole sponsor, and they'll of course want to brand it with their own logo and their own marketing tools. They already have a whole team of people doing this, right? But for us on our side, we don't normally run free events. We usually charge a registration fee, because I'm sure you all encounter that if you don't charge a fee, people will register but maybe not show up. And then that's, unfortunate if you have space for 20% and only 10 of them are showing up. It might be difficult to cover all of the costs with a single corporate partner. So maybe there's a little bit of a negotiation to be done there. And we already have our event. The ABIF has been running MLMC's courses since 2010. We have our branding already, and we use that to raise the awareness for the platform. And also we can reach out to our existing pool of facility users. So, managing through all of those different points, there were some challenges. So of course, the corporate partner may have a preferred format, because they do run those events probably yearly, and they have a format they like. It may not be what the facility likes, but it's important to negotiate to find a common ground for both parties. So there will be one main corporate sponsor. So you can't really invite companies with competing technologies, of course. And then care really needs to be put into maintaining this good working relationship throughout the process, because there's going to be a lot of negotiation and back and forth. It might be a struggle, but you just need to push through and at the end come up with a plan that will fit everybody's needs. And I think Claire evoked that a little bit before. The meeting organization can impact the facility operations. So if the staff is actually attending the event, they won't be available for the facility. So maybe one staff is dedicated to platform, and then the rest can participate. And then when we were developing this event particularly, we at the same time as we were in the negotiation of this event, we had some service that needed to be done on the Opera Phoenix. And it was right in the middle of those negotiations. And I remember me and my colleague were kind of worried of how it would go, because we were not at a great understanding point. And I think before the service arrived and they were also training us, we really made it a point to separate the course organization and the service. So we never talked about this course organization. And I think it's important to maintain that throughout the discussion. Because you don't want to impair the service that you're going to receive from the meeting. And they also went in that direction too, so that was great. So this is an example of how we ended up and what was the format of our meeting at the end. So the facility, of course, wanted to have an advanced workshop, a lot of hands-on activities, and the company had the scientific seminar format that they like to use when they organize this type of event. So we decided to have some seminar from our local users where they maybe explain their challenges, and then the comments would have the company would have time to comment on those challenges, and then we included a short hands-on session at the very end. So we wanted to charge fees, of course, to cover for the food, for the staff time, for maybe travel for the keynote, and the company were not really comfortable with that. They usually want to have those events free. So we agreed on a small fee of $50 so that, at least participants who would register would actually show up to the event. We wanted to have more sponsor, that could be relevant to the event, but not necessarily competing sponsor. The company really wanted to be the sole partner. So at the end of the day, they offered to pay the event almost entirely by giving us a sponsorship of $5,000. So we have our own branding that we already use for all of our events. They already have all their branding. So each of us did our own flyer, and then we were able to distribute those flyers to each of our user base. So we were expecting to have a three-day long event, which was including a poster session, some talks, and advanced hands-on workshop. They are used to running those short events on a one-day, seminar series. So we were able to negotiate this one-day seminar series and added a small hands-on session of a half day after the seminar series.